Throughout human existence, the cycle of chaos and order has continually repeated itself. The wilderness, untamed by humanity, symbolizes chaos. It represents the unknown potential, disorder, and a lack of predictability. It can be scary to navigate, but also the birthplace of many changes. Society symbolizes order. It represents predictability, safety, stability, a state where actions produce the results we desire. However, orderly environments will naturally move to more chaotic states. As humans, we have continually challenged chaos with the intention to establish and maintain order in our environments and within ourselves. Suppose an apocalyptic event occurred, and our home planet had rapidly transformed into a barely habitable planet overnight. Chaos has gripped the world, humanity is threatened, and morale is at an all-time low. To establish order in such a chaotic situation, we must respond in one of three ways. We can change ourselves to fit the environment, adapt. We can change the environment to fit our needs, shape. Or we can abandon the dying planet and find another planet to live on, select. Performing any of the previously mentioned options would move humanity closer to establishing order. However, eventually the cycle would repeat. Some random event would occur, inducing a state of chaos, and order will once again need to be established. Nonetheless, this is an example of this cycle on a large scale. How does this apply to the individual? As we navigate through life, we will inevitably encounter unexpected events that challenge the status quo. These situations will push us out of our well-structured comfort zone and into unpredictable circumstances. Although chaotic, unexpected events can impact our lives in negative or positive ways. So how do we navigate such events? I believe nature has given us the tools to do so. For example, we are able to experience, on a spectrum, many different physical sensations, from the very much desired pleasant sensations to the very worst sensations such as pain. Most of our time is not spent at either extreme end of the spectrum, but somewhere in between. When we do encounter these extremes, they are usually an indicator for what's going on in our environment or within our bodies. Although not always true, generally, things that induce pleasant bodily sensations should be desired, while things that induce pain should be avoided. However, physical sensations are not the only thing guiding our actions. In relation to our goals, logical reasoning, as well as our emotional states, play a role in determining what actions to take. But before we dive into that, let us observe the story of an individual who fell into chaos. Jonathan was a bright individual who had an interest in music. Even as a child, he had long held the desire to perform as a professional musician. However, he also wished for his future to have financial stability and security. Believing the path to achieving his dream futile and uncertain, he became critical of it, so much so that he rejected his desire to be a musician. When he came of age, he pursued a bachelor's in the STEM field, graduated, and took a job working as a programmer. Programming was hard work and expended most of his mental energy. He was making a living and paying the bills. However, he had no interest in his work as a programmer, or advancing his career as one. Too painful to acknowledge the lack of any meaningful long-term ambitions, Jonathan instead pursued meaningless short-term hedonistic activities, and his life began to spiral downward. His situation progressively grew worse, and eventually he lost his job. For weeks he was aimless, spending most of his time in his bed, wondering what to do with himself. It was then that he began to remember his repressed passion for creating music. The joy granted to him when his musical creations came to life, and the even greater joy at the prospect of sharing them. However, he remained critical of the idea, believing it was much too late and too painful for him to pursue such a path. However, time passed, bills came in, savings dwindled, and stress grew. Eventually, the emotional pain of inaction became unbearable, and he was forced to take action. Jonathan accepted that he needed to pursue his interests in order to be happy, or at the very least, escape the negative emotions he was feeling. He charted the path to achieve his long-held ambition, and he broke it down into multiple steps. First, he decided he needed to acquire a part-time job. With this part-time job, he made enough money to support himself while devoting more time to perfecting his craft. He needed to focus on networking, to build connections and promote his music. And when finally given the chance, he will need to give a stellar performance. He knew walking down this path would not be easy, but having goals and a plan have given him a sense of purpose and the ability to reestablish order in his life again. Fast forward a few months, Jonathan's life is stable and is moving in the direction he wants. He's far from achieving his goal of being a professional musician, but he's never been happier. His short-term ambitions are conducive of his long-term goals. As he climbs the mountain of adversity, his motivation surges, and he presses onward. He knows he'll be elated to reach his goal. However, he feels no need to rush his journey and enjoys the steady ride. So what happened? What caused the chaos in Jonathan's life, and how did he restore order? Jonathan's life had fallen into a state of disorder due to his failure to pursue any meaningful goals that aligned with his innate interests. He pursued a job that was not intrinsically interesting to him. Due to that fact, he lacked career ambition, became complacent at his job, not caring to excel. Instead, he focused his attention pursuing short-term hedonistic activities that made him feel good in the moment, but often were not beneficial for his future. Precise long-term ambitions are important for establishing order. They give purpose to one's actions, as in order to achieve any future aspirations, one's actions in the present must be controlled and directed so that the consequence of each resulting action leads to the desired future. So we established that goals are important. But how would a person recognize that his or her life is in a state of disorder? How can we orient ourselves so that we stay on the right path? I think the answer to that would be awareness of one's inner emotional state. I think human emotions exist because they play an important role in our survival in everyday lives. Let's construct a one-dimensional representation of emotions that humans experience in relation to achieving their goals. One side of the spectrum represents positive emotions, while the other negative. The middle is the baseline neutral state. People experience positive emotions when they achieve their goals, or at the very least, when they make progress toward them. However, after a while, they will return to their baseline neutral state. Let's assume, however, that people do not experience positive emotions for inaction, or worse, regressive progress towards their goals. Instead, inaction and regressive progress results in a negative emotional response, such as an increase in stress. A person experiencing regressive progress is more likely to feel an immediate negative emotional response. A person refusing to take action, sometimes referred to as procrastination, will likely feel negative emotions build up over time until progress is made toward their goal. Eventually, with enough progress, they will return to baseline neutral state from the negative state, or may even advance into the positive emotional state. So emotions in tandem with long-term goals help us maintain order in our lives. The long-term goals chart the path to our ideal desired state and direct our actions over time, while our emotions help us stay on the correct path. As we make progress towards this future ideal, we are rewarded with positive emotions and motivation to keep repeating the actions that bring us closer to what we want. However, negative emotions occur when we stagnate, or the distance between us and our objective is lengthened. This signals us to make changes in order to achieve what we want. This does beg the question, How do we deal with wanting multiple things? A person will have a multitude of desires throughout their lifetime. Some of their desires will be able to be acquired rather quickly, while others will have longer time requirements. Some will be extrinsically motivating, and others will be intrinsically motivating. With that being said, how do we organize our goals to achieve the maximum amount of order, efficiency, and pleasure? The answer? Vertical coherence. Vertical coherence, when applied to our ambitions, is the idea that our goals align in such a way that achieving one goal aids us in reaching another goal. Here's a hypothetical situation to flesh out the concept. Jonathan, at the age of 18, has conceptualized everything he wants to accomplish in his lifetime. He aspires to become a college graduate, musician, scientist, and humanitarian. He also desires to maintain his grades as well as his overall health. He has many goals, so where to start? First, he needs to determine what can be accomplished in the short term, what in the long term, and what in between. Aligning goals in a way where short-term goals help achieve longer-term goals creates more vertical coherence. After the goals have been categorized by time needed to achieve, it would be beneficial to look at the goals and activities associated with them, to determine if they are extrinsically or intrinsically motivating. To clarify, intrinsically motivating activities are activities that an individual will participate in because the act of doing so is innately pleasurable. Extrinsically motivating activities are not necessarily innately enjoyable to participate in. However, an individual will be motivated to perform said activity due to the reward it will bring. An example to illustrate this would be a person who exercises because it feels good versus a person who exercises to achieve a certain physical aesthetic. Intrinsic activities are easier to focus on compared to extrinsic ones. Therefore, intrinsic activities should aid in accomplishing extrinsic activities. However, if there is an activity that is both intrinsically and extrinsically motivating, then that activity should help accomplish another extrinsic activity. Let's run Jonathan's goals through this organizational method and see what happens. Jonathan determines that it will take a long time to become a scientist, a musician, and a humanitarian. He places those goals into the long-term category. He figures that graduating college will take a while, but not as long as the previously mentioned goals, so that is sorted into the midterm goals. What he's able to focus on in the short term is maintaining his health, social life, and keeping himself on the path to graduate college. Thus, these are assigned to his short-term goals. After goals are sorted via their time constraints, it helps to break down goals into smaller steps or tasks. These tasks should be reorganized depending on their intrinsic or extrinsic in nature. For the sake of simplicity, we shall focus on one of the goals. Jonathan breaks down his overall health into two categories: his physical health and his mental health. He determines that in order to maintain his physical health, he needs to eat healthy and exercise routinely. As for his mental health, he finds it vital that he meditates and remains socially active. Jonathan loves socializing with people and hanging out with friends, so maintaining his social life is an intrinsic activity for him. He forces himself to routinely meditate. Although boring, it helps lower his stress and keeps him more focused. To achieve and maintain his physical health, he will need to eat healthier food choices and begin to routinely exercise. Neither of these tasks are enjoyable for him. However, he desires the benefits that come with a healthy body, so he's motivated to do them anyway. Therefore, healthy eating, physical exercise, and meditation should be considered extrinsic activities for Jonathan. Due to his intrinsic nature, Jonathan should incorporate socializing into his other activities. By doing so, it will be easier for him to maintain his physical and mental health. If both his physical and mental health are in good shape, then he's in a healthy state overall. If he's in a healthy state overall, he'll be able to better focus on his studies. If he's able to better focus on his studies, he's likely to graduate college. That degree he obtains will likely lead to opportunities to fulfill his other ambitions. Let's propose a hypothetical situation. How would we apply vertical coherence to three goals that have the same time constraint and are valued equally in terms of intrinsic-extrinsic value? If I have goals A, B, and C, the question I ask is, which of these three objectives can help me accomplish another? Well, can C help me accomplish B? No. Okay. Can C help me accomplish A? No. Okay. Well, can B help me accomplish C? Yes. Awesome. Can B help me accomplish A? No. Okay. Well, can A help me accomplish C? Yes. Awesome. And can A help me accomplish B? Also yes. And that is awesome. Well, then the order for this particular case is decided. I should focus on A, then B, then C, as A helps me accomplish B and C, B helps me accomplish C, and focusing on C would have not brought me any closer to A or B. That is why A to B to C is the most efficient. Also keep in mind that if what we discussed earlier is true, that humans feel happier when progressing towards goals, then is it not possible that we are likely to experience more joy when making progress towards three goals at once as opposed to one or two? Hey guys, I want to thank you for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one.